Some places don't want to be found. They want to be returned to. If you've ever felt the weight of something unfinished behind you, if you've ever sensed that a moment was waiting where you left it, come with me. There are doors that only open when you stop pretending you forgot what's behind them. The city appeared at the edge of the rain. No sign announced it. No road officially led there. One moment the highway was empty, stretching forward beneath a low gray sky. The next it wasn't. Buildings rose where there had been nothing but trees. Windows glowed softly through mist. Streetlights hummed with a tired amber patience. Rebecca noticed because the rain changed. It had been falling straight down for hours. Cold, relentless, the kind of rain that erased distance and made time feel thicker. At the city's edge it slowed. The drops began to drift sideways, as if reconsidering their destination. Rebecca pulled over instinctively, hazard lights clicking on though there was no traffic to warn. The car idled, engine vibrating beneath her like a held breath. Her navigation screen went blank. Not frozen, not malfunctioning, blank. She stared at it for a long moment, then reached out and tapped the glass. Nothing. No map, no signal indicator, no error message, just absence. The radio cut out next, dissolving into soft static that didn't fluctuate no matter how she tuned it. Her phone showed the time but no date, no network, no notifications. She should have turned around. That was the sensible thing. The thing every instinct not already compromised by exhaustion would have insisted upon. Instead, Rebecca stepped out into the rain. The air smelled different here. Not cleaner, not fresher, older, like paper kept too long in a closed room. The city waited without urgency. Streets stretched inward, curving gently out of sight. No cars moved, no voices carried. But the lights were on, and somewhere deeper within, something clicked softly, like pages turning. Rebecca locked her car and didn't remember deciding to do so. The first street was narrow and orderly, lined with buildings that felt familiar without resembling anywhere Rebecca had been. Brickwork in muted tones, storefronts with large windows, signs written in fonts that suggested intention rather than branding. One read, "Second drafts." Another, "Missed connections." Farther down, "Apologies never sent." Rebecca stopped walking. The rain did not fall here. It hovered at the boundary of the street, droplets suspended just beyond the sidewalk, as if the city had politely declined weather. Her footsteps echoed too clearly. Each sound lingered a second longer than it should have, like the street was taking notes. She approached the nearest window. Inside the shop labeled "Second Drafts" were shelves. Thousands of them, each filled with notebooks, loose pages, folders tied with string. Some were neatly labeled, others weren't labeled at all. A small card sat on the window ledge. "Nothing here is finished. Nothing here is lost." Rebecca's chest tightened. She hadn't told anyone where she was going tonight, hadn't even known herself until the car had taken the exit without conscious thought. Her reflection in the glass looked wrong. Not distorted, just slightly delayed, like it needed an extra moment to agree with her movements. She stepped back. The city did not react. It didn't need to. The door to Second Drafts opened, without sound. Inside, the air was warm and dry. Lamps cast a soft, even glow, eliminating shadows without feeling artificial. The smell of paper was stronger here, layered with something faintly metallic, like ink left too long uncapped. A desk sat near the center of the room. Behind it stood a woman with silver hair, pulled into a low knot, glasses perched on the end of her nose. She was writing carefully in a ledger, pen moving with deliberate patience. She did not look up. "You're late," the woman said. Rebecca froze. "I'm sorry?" The pen continued its steady motion. "Most people are." Rebecca swallowed. "Where am I?" The woman turned a page. "You're in the archive," she said. "Specifically the outer stacks. We don't catalog arrivals by location, only by reason." "I didn't come for a reason," Rebecca said, though even as she spoke it, the words felt thin. The woman finally looked up. Her eyes were kind, not warm, kind in the way someone is when they've seen the same mistake made many times and no longer take it personally. "No one does," she said. "That's why it works." She gestured gently toward the shelves. "Walk," the woman added. "If something belongs to you, it will notice." Rebecca hesitated. "What if I take something that isn't mine?" The woman smiled faintly. "Then it won't leave with you." Rebecca wandered. Time behaved strangely between the shelves. She passed notebooks with spines labeled in handwriting she almost recognized. Journals sealed with wax impressions that stirred memories she couldn't place. Envelopes yellowed with age but bearing dates from years that hadn't happened yet. Then she saw it. A single envelope resting alone on a low shelf. No label. No date. Just her name. Rebecca. Her breath caught. She lifted the envelope with hands that suddenly felt unsteady. It was heavier than paper should be. Dense with intention. She did not open it. She knew without reading it that she had once been too afraid to. Behind her the shelves shifted softly, like something adjusting its posture. The archive waited. Rebecca carried the envelope like it could bruise her. She walked deeper into second drafts, past shelves that grew narrower and taller, past lamps whose light softened as if trying not to startle her. The archive did not push, it did not lure. It simply made space for whatever she was already doing to herself. A corridor opened between two bookcases that should not have been far enough apart to allow it. The air beyond was cooler. The smell changed. Less paper, more dust, and beneath that, something unmistakably domestic. Laundry detergent. Soap. That faint, clean scent of a home that has not been lived in for a while but was once cared for with devotion. Rebecca stopped at the mouth of the corridor. Her throat tightened. Her palms dampened around the envelope. At the end of the hallway was a door. Plain wood. Chipped paint. A brass handle worn smooth where fingers had turned it 1,000 times. It was a door from her childhood. Not identical to one she remembered. The one she had actually lived with. The one her body knew without needing proof. A small card hung from the handle by a string. Return policy. You may enter once. You may leave whenever you choose. What you bring back will be yours to carry. Rebecca stared at the words until the letters softened at the edges. She tried to laugh and failed. Then she reached for the handle. It was warm. That was wrong. A door in an archive should be cool, impersonal, neutral. This one held heat like it had been touched moments ago. Rebecca opened it. The room on the other side was small and dim, lit by a single lamp on a side table. The light was not bright enough to be useful. It was bright enough to be familiar. A couch sat against the wall. A thin blanket draped over one arm. A coffee table held a coaster, a pen, a half-finished crossword. Everything was arranged with the unthinking order of a life in progress. And the air smelled like yesterday. Not metaphorically, literally. The exact scent of her mother's living room on a rainy evening, when dinner had been simple and the television low, when the world outside had been distant enough to ignore. Rebecca stepped inside, the envelope pressed to her chest. The door closed behind her without her touching it. The sound was soft, final, and strangely gentle. She turned slowly. A record player sat in the corner, needle hovering over a record that had not started spinning yet. A bookshelf held titles she recognized and titles she didn't. Books that looked worn in ways she could feel in her fingertips from across the room. On the wall above the couch was a framed photograph, a family photo. Her, younger, smiling in a way that felt like a different species. Her mother beside her, hand resting on Rebecca's shoulder. And a space on the other side, blurred as if the camera had failed to commit. Rebecca stared at the blur until it made her eyes ache. She walked closer. The blur did not resolve. It remained a deliberate refusal. Rebecca's breath shook. "I don't understand," she whispered into the room. The lamp flickered once. Not in warning. In acknowledgement. The record player clicked. The needle lowered. Music began, soft and slow. The kind of song that never fully ends, just fades and returns, as if it has been waiting for the right moment to re-enter your life. Rebecca sat on the couch without choosing to. The cushion gave beneath her like it remembered her weight. The envelope rested in her hands. She looked at it, and this time she opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No letterhead, no signature, just handwriting. Her own. Not current Rebecca. Not the tired woman who drove until the road turned into a city that wasn't on any map. This handwriting was neater, younger. Written by someone who still believed that making something clear could make it safe. The message was short. "If you're here, it means you kept going. I'm sorry I didn't." Rebecca's vision blurred instantly. The room held steady, as if prepared for her to break. She pressed the paper to her mouth to keep any sound from escaping. The lamp flickered again, and somewhere behind the wall, faint as a page turning, the archive listened. When Rebecca finally stood again, she did it slowly, like getting up from grief could disturb it. The room did not change, but she noticed details now that her panic had dulled before. A faint crack in the ceiling plaster, a small stain on the rug, a scuff mark on the baseboard near the door. Imperfections that made it feel real. Too real. On the coffee table, beneath the coaster, was a thin folder she hadn't seen before. It was plain, the kind used for school forms or medical records. A label had been written on it in careful block letters. Inventory. Rebecca's fingers hovered above it. She did not want to open another thing with her name on it. She opened it anyway. Inside were pages. Not many, but each one was heavy in a way paper should not be. A list. Simple. Clinical. Like someone had tried to make emotions manageable by arranging them into rows. Rebecca read the first entry. The phone call you let ring because you were tired. Her chest tightened. She flipped to the next. The apology you planned to send after you found the right words. She turned the page. The question you never asked because you were afraid of the answer. Rebecca's hands began to shake. The list continued. Specific, unforgiving, accurate in the way only truth can be when it has waited long enough to stop caring about your comfort. Near the bottom was an entry that made her stop breathing for a second. The message you deleted without reading. Rebecca stared at that line until the paper seemed to ripple. She remembered. A notification late at night. A name she hadn't seen in years. A message preview cut off mid-sentence. Her thumb hovering, then swiping it away, deleting it before it could become real. She had told herself it was self-protection. Now she wasn't sure if it had been fear. The final entry was not numbered. It sat alone at the bottom of the page, separated by a blank space, written in darker ink. The version of you who would have stayed. Rebecca's mouth went dry. The room's music softened, as if giving her space to hear her own thoughts. She closed the folder with care and set it back down. The archive did not demand she take it. It did not insist she confront everything at once. It simply revealed what existed. She looked toward the door. For the first time since entering, she wondered whether she could leave. A soft click sounded behind her. She turned. A second door had appeared on the far wall, where there had been only wallpaper before. This one was not familiar. This one was new. A small sign hung from its handle. Next, the stacks of interrupted lives. Rebecca swallowed. The room smelled like yesterday, but the door smelled like rain. She walked toward it. The second door opened onto a corridor, so long it seemed to curve into its own distance. The walls were lined with clocks, not decorative ones. Functional, varied. Old analog faces with worn hands, sleek digital panels with numbers that flickered, pocket watches pinned open like specimens, wristwatches nailed to the wall like offerings. None of them showed the same time. Some moved too fast, some too slow. Some ticked backward with stubborn confidence. The floor beneath Rebecca's feet was tiled in a pattern that made her slightly dizzy, repeating shapes that almost formed a map if she stared long enough. She did not stare too long. She walked. As she moved down the corridor, she began to hear things. Not voices exactly. Fragments. A laugh cut short. The start of a sentence that never finished. A breath drawn in surprise and not released. Minutes that had been interrupted mid-life, preserved in this hallway like insects in amber. Rebecca passed a clock the size of her torso. Its face was cracked. The time displayed was 11:58. The second hand trembled, trying to move forward, failing, trying again. A small label beneath it read, "The 2 minutes before you turned around." Rebecca stopped. Her pulse surged. She did not know what it meant, and she knew exactly what it meant. She walked faster. The corridor seemed to lengthen. A faint, delicate chime sounded behind her, as if the archive had quietly marked her increased pace. She reached a doorway on the left, barely visible between the clocks. No sign. No label. Just a thin line of light spilling out. Rebecca stepped through. Inside was an elevator. An old one, the kind with a metal gate that slides shut, and a panel of worn buttons. The lighting inside was dim and slightly yellowed, like it had been waiting for someone for a long time. Rebecca looked at the buttons. They were not labeled with numbers. They were labeled with phrases. Before you knew, after you left, the day you didn't go, the moment you almost spoke, where it changed, where it would have. Her stomach turned. She reached for the button that seemed least dangerous. Her finger hovered. The elevator's gate slid shut on its own. The sound of metal against metal was crisp, decisive. The car began to descend. No jerk, no sway. Just smooth downward motion, like gravity had finally been given permission to be honest. Rebecca's ears popped. The lights flickered once, then steadied. A small speaker crackled softly, and the silver-haired woman's voice came through, gentle and distant. "Keep breathing," she said. "Most people forget they can." Rebecca swallowed hard. "How do I get out?" she asked, voice shaking. "You leave when you're ready," the voice replied. "Not when you're comfortable." The speaker went silent. The elevator continued downward. The doors opened. Rebecca stepped out into a space that was not a hallway and not a chamber, but something in between. The room was large, yet felt contained, as if the edges were carefully holding it together. The first thing she noticed was the light, late afternoon light, warm and slanted, dust visible in it. The sun positioned at that angle that makes everything feel temporary in a beautiful way. The second thing she noticed was the sound. A kettle heating, a chair scraping softly against a wooden floor. Someone humming under their breath, not as performance but as habit. Rebecca's throat closed. She knew this place. Not the exact layout, not the exact furniture, but the feeling. A small apartment, older building, sun through thin curtains, the kind of place where time slowed because nothing demanded it move faster. On a small table near the window sat a phone, old model. Physical buttons. Screen lit up with one unread message notification. Rebecca stared at it. This was the message. The one she deleted. The one she never read. She crossed the room slowly, as if stepping too quickly might make the scene collapse. The phone screen glowed softly. A name displayed at the top. Rowan. Rebecca's hands began to shake again. She did not touch the phone yet. She listened. The humming stopped, as if the room had noticed her attention. The kettle clicked off. Silence held for half a second. Then, from the doorway that led deeper into the apartment, footsteps approached. Rebecca's breath caught. The archive had promised her no one would leave with her, unless they belonged to her. It had not promised she would not have to see them. A figure entered the room. Not fully lit, not detailed enough to be a person in the present, but human and familiar. Rebecca's heart slammed against her ribs. The figure paused near the counter, as if sensing something. Then it spoke softly, to itself. "I hope she reads it this time." Rebecca covered her mouth with her hand. Her eyes burned. The phone on the table vibrated once, the unread message pulsing like a heartbeat. Rebecca reached out. Her fingers hovered over the screen, and the room waited with her. She tapped the notification. The message opened instantly, as if it had been holding its breath. It was not long. It was not dramatic. That hurt more. It read, "Hey, I don't know how to say this without making it heavy, so I'm not going to try. I'm leaving town tomorrow. I wanted to see you before I go, even if it's just 5 minutes. If you don't want to, I'll understand. But I needed you to know I tried." Rebecca stared until the words blurred. 5 minutes. She could have given 5 minutes. She could have given a goodbye that didn't become a ghost. Her knees weakened and she sat down at the table, the chair creaking softly under her weight. Across the room, the dim figure did not move closer. It did not cross the space between them. It simply stood, waiting in the doorway like a question that had been asked and left unanswered. Rebecca swallowed. "I'm sorry," she whispered, though she didn't know who she was saying it to. The phone screen shifted. A second message appeared beneath the first, one that had never existed in her world. "If you ever find a place where unfinished things go, tell them I didn't hate you. I just couldn't stay in a story where I was always waiting." Rebecca's breath broke. The room's warm light dimmed slightly, as if the sun had moved behind a cloud. The figure in the doorway lowered its head. Not in anger, in acceptance. Rebecca looked up, tears falling freely now. "Can I fix it?" she asked. The figure did not answer with words. Instead, it stepped back, and the doorway behind it became something else, shifting subtly into a darker passage lined with shelves. A sign appeared on the wall beside it, written in the same careful block letters as the inventory folder. "Next, the aisle of alternate exits." Rebecca stared at the sign. Then she looked back at the phone. The messages remained on the screen. "Real in this place, real enough to hurt." Rebecca stood. She did not take the phone. She didn't need to. The weight of it had already moved into her. She walked toward the new passageway, the warm room fading behind her like a memory deciding whether to forgive. And somewhere in the archive, deeper than the outer stacks, pages turned quietly, as if preparing the next chapter she had avoided for years. The aisle was narrow enough that Rebecca could touch both walls if she stretched her arms out. Shelves rose on either side, packed not with books but with doors. Hundreds of them. Some were plain, some ornate, some damaged, some freshly painted, their handles still gleaming. Each door was embedded directly into the shelving, standing upright like a choice preserved mid-thought. Small placards were mounted beside each one. Not titles. Descriptions. Left early. Stayed too long. Said yes out of fear. Said no out of pride. Waited for permission. Didn't ask. Rebecca moved slowly, reading as she went. Her chest felt tight, like the air here was thinner, more intentional. One door near eye level drew her attention. It was blue, faded. The paint chipped at the edges. The placard read, "The exit where you called back." Her hand twitched. She imagined it. The call made in a parking lot. The awkward pause. The relief threaded through embarrassment. The way things might not have been perfect but would have been real. She imagined the door opening onto a street she recognized. A version of herself stepping through with uncertainty instead of avoidance. The handle was warm. Rebecca pulled her hand back sharply. "I don't get to live all of them," she whispered. The aisle answered by remaining silent. At the end of the aisle was a door unlike the others. No placard, no color, just raw wood, unpainted, unfinished, like it had been installed before anyone decided what it was for. The handle was cold. Rebecca approached it cautiously. As she reached for it, words appeared on the wood itself, as if rising from beneath the grain. "This exit is not about the past." Rebecca's breath caught. She turned the handle. The space beyond was vast and dim, lit not by lamps, but by a soft ambient glow that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The ceiling was lost in shadow. The floor stretched farther than she could see. In the center of the room stood a long table. On it lay objects, not relics, not memories, plans. A folded map with no destination marked. A notebook with blank pages that smelled faintly of ink. A set of keys that did not match any door she had seen. A phone with no messages, no contacts, powered on and waiting. Rebecca approached slowly. At the far end of the room, someone sat. Not the librarian, not Rowan. Someone her age. Similar posture. Similar way of holding themselves like they were always preparing to be asked to explain. The person looked up. It was her. Not a mirror. Not a reflection. A version. This Rebecca's eyes were clearer. Tired, yes, but not hollow. There was a steadiness to her presence that felt earned. "You're late," the other Rebecca said gently. Rebecca almost laughed. Apparently that's a theme. The other Rebecca smiled faintly. "You don't have to stay." "Neither do you," Rebecca replied. The other Rebecca nodded. "True. But one of us has to decide what unfinished means." Rebecca looked down at the table. "These aren't memories." "No," the other Rebecca said. "They're permissions." Rebecca's throat tightened. "For what?" "For continuing," the other Rebecca replied, "without pretending it's the same as fixing." Silence stretched between them. Not uncomfortable, just honest. Rebecca picked up the notebook. Its pages were blank, but not empty. They felt expectant, like a room with the windows open. "What happens if I take something?" Rebecca asked. "You'll carry it," the other Rebecca said. "Not as regret, as weight." "And if I take nothing?" The other Rebecca met her gaze. "Then you'll keep returning here." Rebecca set the notebook down and reached for the keys instead. They were heavier than she expected. "What do they open?" she asked. The other Rebecca shrugged. "Things you'll recognize when you get there." Rebecca closed her fingers around them. The room's glow shifted subtly, as if acknowledging a decision. The silver-haired woman was waiting when Rebecca stepped back into the outer stacks. She stood near the desk, ledger closed now, hands folded loosely in front of her. "You found the exits," she said. "I found one I couldn't take," Rebecca replied. "That's most of them," the woman said kindly. Rebecca looked down at the keys in her palm. "Why do you keep this place?" The librarian considered the question. "Because unfinished things don't disappear," she said. "They either turn into ghosts or foundations. We give them a place to decide." Rebecca nodded slowly. "Can I come back?" The woman's eyes softened. "Everyone does. The trick is not needing to." The front door of Second Drafts opened on its own, rain visible beyond it now, falling normally, obeying gravity again. Rebecca hesitated at the threshold. "What happens to the rooms I leave behind?" she asked. "They stay," the librarian said. "But they stop waiting." Rebecca stepped outside. The rain soaked her instantly, cold and real. The city behind her did not vanish, but it no longer invited her attention. Its lights dimmed, becoming background rather than destination. Her car was where she'd left it. The navigation screen flickered back to life, showing a map she recognized. Rebecca sat behind the wheel for a long moment, keys resting on the passenger seat. Not car keys. The other ones. She started the engine. Rebecca did not drive home. She drove until the rain thinned and the sky lightened at the edges, until the road curved toward a town she had once planned to move to, and never had. She stopped at a small cafe just after dawn. The windows were fogged, the lights inside warm. She hesitated, then went in. The bell above the door chimed. A barista looked up and smiled. "Morning." Rebecca returned the smile, surprised by how natural it felt. She ordered coffee she didn't usually drink, sat at a table by the window, pulled the keys from her pocket, and set them beside the cup. They did not glow. They did not hum. They simply existed. Wait without demand. Rebecca took out her phone. No notifications. No unread messages. She opened a new text. Paused. Then typed. Not to Rowan. Not to the past. To someone in the present she had been meaning to call for months. She pressed send. Outside, the rain stopped. Days passed. Rebecca noticed small changes. She interrupted herself less often. She stayed in conversations a beat longer. She allowed silence to be silence instead of a signal to escape. Some nights, she dreamed of shelves and doors and clocks that ticked backward. She woke without panic. The dreams were reminders, not summons. She kept the keys on a hook by her door. They never rattled on their own. Months later, Rebecca returned to the highway where the city had appeared. It did not appear again. The road remained empty, stretching honestly into distance. Rebecca stood by her car, raincoat zipped, wind tugging at her hair, and felt something settle inside her. Not closure, orientation. She didn't need the archive to exist forever. She only needed to know it had existed once. On her desk at home sat a notebook. Not the one from the table. A different one. Its pages filled slowly. Not every day. Not with urgency. Just enough to mark that she was still here. Sometimes she wrote letters she never sent. Sometimes she wrote nothing and left the page blank on purpose. Both felt honest. Rebecca walked through her life carrying the keys quietly. They opened nothing dramatic. No sudden revelations. No alternate timelines. They opened moments. A willingness to stay. A choice to ask. A refusal to disappear mid-sentence. The archive did not vanish. It simply stopped being the only place unfinished things were allowed to exist. Somewhere, the librarian turned a page. A room dimmed its lights. A door without a placard remained unclaimed. The archive did not close. It never does. It waits for those who believe unfinished means broken, and gently reminds them it doesn't. It just means still becoming. Some things don't ask to be fixed. They ask to be carried. The archive was never a place for regret. It was a place for permission. Permission to stop pretending that unfinished means failed. Permission to leave doors closed without sealing them shut. Permission to keep walking without erasing where you came from. Not everything you don't choose is a mistake. Not everything you leave behind is lost. Some things are simply waiting for you to stop running from the weight they were always meant to become.